Draft week in Green Bay, the most compelling storylines of the upcoming NFL draft, a new home for a former Vol, and the end of an era for College GameDay. This is the College GameDay podcast for Monday, April 21st, draft week. Rece Davis and Pete Thamel here. We'll talk plenty about Lee Corso's decision to step down and have one final farewell show to start the 2025 season. We'll also be joined by Matt Miller to talk NFL draft. What is the situation with Shedeur Sanders? What about Jalen Milroe, who's apparently going to be in Green Bay while others have decided not to be? But let's start with a guy who hopes to be in a draft situation in the not-too-distant future. Erstwhile Tennessee quarterback, now UCLA signal caller, Nico Iamaleava, who has decided to cast his lot with UCLA. Now, there are a lot of different avenues to talk about here, Pete. So let's start with this. The most obvious thing seems to be that there was no big-time market out there for Nico, that he overplayed his hand, financially speaking, with Tennessee, and probably exercised very poor judgment in the path that he took that put the Volunteers in the position to say, we can't have this in our program, so good luck to you. And it also cost him some money. I mean, I don't think he got the same thing by the reports that you and others have done at UCLA. You also factor in this that many people won't think of. Tennessee is a no state income tax state. California most definitely is not a no state income tax state. So Nico is playing at UCLA at least in his mind and the minds of his representatives, at a highly discounted rate. How did this come about, and where does your sense tell you that Iamaleava is from a mental standpoint? This is a blow to the ego, and it also is disruptive in terms of getting ready for a season.
So you want to know, for all the Nico storylines and all the things people are talking about, Rece, what I'm most compelled by in all this, I think it's got lost in the discourse, and that's development, all right? In this portal era, especially with quarterbacks, this four-star goes here, he leaves there, he goes there, he leaves there, he goes there. It is inarguable that for Nico's development, the best thing for him to do in April of 2025 was to stay at Tennessee in his third year in a system, in a very good team that made the playoffs last year and made some needed upgrades on offense, for him to mature as a quarterback and get ready for the NFL draft, which his camp has always wanted to be a 3 and done. There is zero argument that the best thing for him to do would have been to stay at Tennessee. Much like there's zero argument that Tennessee is not going to go out and find a magic upgrade, have the player learn the system, win the job in camp, start in week one in an offense that's so predicated on timing and rhythm and muscle memory and such. So I think what's lost here in all the sort of narrative infighting and all of the screaming discourse is that development, as often as happened in the portal era, just gets tossed aside. And I don't think there's a chance that Nico, who is the 9th best quarterback in the SEC statistically right now, can go to UCLA, win the job, learn a complex offense, and go lead an inferior team to the same heights that he led that. Is Nico an upgrade for UCLA? Definitely. Do you understand why UCLA took a bit of a risk on him? And I do think there's some risk there. Absolutely. Name another UCLA player. They have some decent players. Jalen Berger, the tailback who came from Michigan State, Wisconsin. Good players, portal era, move around guys. But he gives them an indelible local star, a definitive talking point. And as Deshaun Foster tries to build back to relevancy at a difficult time where they are in that league, the move makes a lot of sense. And the sense I've gotten from covering this thing pretty closely the last couple of weeks, Rece, is that Nico hasn't had a ton of say in what's happening with Nico. He has not been in the driver's seats of these decisions and these moves. He generally had a good reputation at Tennessee. He wasn't a malcontent there. He had a strong relationship with Josh Heupel. He was liked in the building. He was thought to be a solid leader. He was not a problem at all at Tennessee. He was well liked there, and he seemed to like it there by all accounts. This crossroads hit, and again, everyone's going to have their side, right? Nico's camp is not going to come out and say, we asked for more money, it backfired on us, and we took a big pay cut. They're not going to say that. So they're now
But that's what happened. But that's what happened, right?
Yeah. Yes. That's the general. The general tenor is they had been looking for more. They continued to be hunting around it. Everybody's redoing their deals as you go into rev share this time of year. They were hunting and poking. They had when the portal opened right after the playoff. And yes, that is the general tenor of what happened. They're going to deny that. They've now thrown scheme fit and NFL preparedness out there. Yes, which you are certainly right to be skeptical of.
That's hot garbage, by the way. The one thing that they have said is that, the pieces around him weren't sufficient, weren't what he needed. And UCLA is. Look, I'm really bullish on Deshaun Foster. I like him very much. Mm-hmm. You know my friendship with and belief in as a rising star in the coaching industry and their new offensive coordinator, Tino Sunseri. Now, mm-hmm. whether I'm right about that, we'll find out. We don't know. But I believe in Tino. I believe in Deshaun. I think he's a good coach and a good fit there. But you can't go in and start saying that Tennessee is not as prepared as UCLA in terms of pieces around him. That's preposterous on its face. And the other thing I would say about Nico and not having a say in this is I do have some sympathy for him there. And I also have some respect for his elders and his family. But there comes a time when a father has to let his son be in the driver's seat and make the decisions, good or bad. And there's also a time when a son lovingly and respectfully, hopefully, has to say, Dad, you need to step back in this. If dad is being overbearing, or if the agent's being overbearing, or if the agent has been too empowered. This is a colossal miscue by the entire Iamaleava camp to do this. Now, does it mean that he can't have success? Does it mean that he can't turn this into a positive and be fantastic? Of course it doesn't. But what they did was put up an unnecessary hurdle. And, look, maybe this benefits UCLA. Maybe it teaches Nico to learn a new system quickly, and that benefits him down the road. But the hurdle was unnecessary, and they put it in his way. And Nico needs to step up right now and take charge of his life and his career respectfully and with love, because I know that family's close, and I have tremendous respect for respecting your elders. But he got some poor advice, and he didn't stand up enough to say, I don't need to do this. Whoever was telling him not to go to practice, if that indeed is the case. He needs to stand up and say, I'm not doing that. He's an adult. He might be a young adult. He might be a maturing adult, but he is an adult. And he was the one that they were paying, and he needed to step up, and he didn't. And I hope he learns the lesson from it, because the times that I've been around him, your sense of the feelings around Tennessee was exactly the feeling that I got from him. A likable guy, charismatic guy. The guy that teammates are drawn to generally, although, it sounds like maybe there was some revolt, at Tennessee when he didn't show. Maybe, but my impression of it in the times I've been around him was very positive. So I hope they all figure it out. Pete, I hope the family, whoever it is, family, agent, reps, whoever it is, I hope they've learned a lesson from it too and say, we put him in a tough spot. We're not doing that again. Everybody makes errors in judgment. The question is, do you continue to make them and make them worse? And I hope that they make them better for Nico's sake and for their sake. And heck, I hope he plays great at UCLA. Obviously, I've stated my interest in seeing Tino and Deshaun succeed. I want to see that. But this was an unnecessary hurdle that they put in the way by leaving Tennessee, in my judgment.
Just to put a coda on the NFL draft Tennessee piece of it, Hendon Hooker was the 68th pick in the draft in 2023. He was coming off a torn ACL. So he's basically the 68th pick in the draft with a redshirt year facing him. So there's plenty of recent empirical evidence that a successful quarterback with multiple years in that system, who has a lot of arm talent, like Nico does and like Hendon Hooker does, can go in the NFL is going to look at that system and say, okay, this translates. This isn't Baylor 15 years ago where people are like, oh, we can't draft that guy. Like that system doesn't draft. It's just the world has changed. The NFL looks a lot more like college now. So there were just a lot of like from the fetal position excuses that got machine gunned out that were greeted around the industry with a lot of eye rolls.
Well, we're going to see this in the draft this week in Green Bay when a franchise takes a quarterback, they better build around his strengths. Look at what, obviously the quintessential examples are Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. Do what they can do. This idea that you have to, that it's 30 years ago and you have to put
my system,
7-step drops. If they can't do full field progression reads, who needs them? No, do what he can do, and you know what? Like we often say on this podcast, Pete, it's not against the rules to improve. You don't think, and the one thing I think that gets a little oversold sometimes, and I know Lamar Jackson had a lot of development to do when he got there. Virtually all quarterbacks do. He was coached by Bob Petrino. Bobby Petrino, it wasn't, they weren't super simplistic where he didn't get it. He just, he needed a little time. Josh Allen needed some time to, work on accuracy, work on different things, not just use the immense arm talent. These guys get to improve. And I think that Nico can do that. And I hope he does it at UCLA. And I hope he gets a chance to do it in the NFL. But you're 100% right. The idea that, being in the Josh Heupel, Baylor hybrid, whatever offense, you're not getting drafted is high. Come on. That's just not true.
You don't get drafted when you lose a lot of football games when you're a quarterback. That's what happens. That's when you don't get drafted. And you need to be better than the 9th best quarterback in your league to get in the conversation to be drafted. And I don't know if UCLA is going to be better than the 9th best team in the Big Ten. Now, I do give them credit. They really had a nice finishing kick last year, Rece, after things were looking pretty dire early on. They had a 3-game winning streak, I want to say, at Rutgers, at Nebraska, and Iowa. I think it was in that order. And they went 3-6 in the Big Ten. But I think if you had pulled us in early October, we would have said they're looking at like an offer in the league. If we're being honest with each other, right? Especially you weren't going to give them wins, 3,000 miles away in Piscataway against a pretty good Rutgers team and against Nebraska. So I think Deshaun Foster showed that he can galvanize a team and get them to play hard. I want to say they finished with a win over Fresno at the end of the year to go 5-7. And that's a long way from the team that was in a dogfight with Hawaii earlier in the year. So he showed some signs of promise as a coach. My worry for Deshaun Foster here, because of what the brother in the camp did to UCLA by ditching him on the morning of signing day this year, that if there is something that doesn't work out with Nico, like there were signs to not do this, right? I hope it works out. I hope it works out for both sides. But Nico's camp, or the Iamaleava's camp, had certainly given UCLA enough reason for pause. So it will be very interesting, Rece, pushing forward how he handles that. Now, look, hopefully he fills the Rose Bowl, right? I mean, UCLA needs to sell tickets. Like it is the 8th sports show in town, and Nico playing well, just Nico isn't going to fill the Rose Bowl. Let's be clear about that. The dynamics in LA enough. Nico winning could. Nico winning will be the best quarterback in LA, right? I think Nico's more talented than Jalon Walker, right?
I would agree with that. Yeah. Now let me ask you this: UCLA already had a transfer quarterback come in, and I'm not saying that Joe Aguilar is as purely physically gifted as Nico Iamaleava.
He's a good player.
You can't bring in Nico or anyone else this late and just say, unless you are just barren at the position, and say you are starting no matter what.
I would say this at 10:22 on Monday morning. Joe Aguilar's got some decisions to make soon.
Right. That's what I was getting to. Because he knows that Nico will get the benefit of the doubt for all of the reasons that we have mentioned.
Sure.
Now what are his opportunities?
He's got probably a year, so he's living on borrowed time.
Uh-huh.
If he wants to show that he can play in the NFL, he got to play.
Uh-huh.
And there are places. Well, I mean, he was going to be the starter there. He was making good money. Like they didn't take him off the scrap heap. He was a coveted guy late in the process, and they paid him a real amount starting quarterback money to go there. So yeah, it'll be pretty fascinating. But that quarterback room could end up looking a lot different. And I believe they're only like 8 or 9 spring practices in too. So there's going to be some disruption from now until then. Nico obviously can't practice because he did already at Tennessee. And of all the rules that haven't fallen yet, the double spring practice rule is not. It's still, that's where they're drawing the line, Rece. Can't have 2 spring practices.
Let's not let them practice more football. They might get better at football. Why in the world would we do that? And what are the chances, and let's leave the Nico talk at this, because it has taken up a lot of the oxygen on podcasts and airwaves over the last couple of weeks.
The occasional Easter Sunday dinner, too, by the way, could get interjected into.
Yeah. What are the chances of a de facto straight up trade? Aguilar winds up at Tennessee. Is that even on the table?
I think it would be like there's not a 0% chance of that. I think it's that's possible because I think Tennessee's the needle they need to thread, Rece, is they can't scare Merklinger off, the backup, who's the only guy really who knows it. They have George McIntyre just came in. He's been there for 6-8 weeks, right? So you can't, with as nuanced as that offense is, you have to make sure that the quarterback who knows that offense stays. So the needle thread there is a good veteran. But you also want to bring someone in who's played some college football too, because that's the surest way to hurt your team is you've just got a bunch of inexperienced quarterbacks. And it's such a quarterback-driven program, and Dylan Sampson isn't walking through that door, as we know. So, but I don't think there's a non-zero chance of that. Look, like anyone who's a quarterback right now, Joe Aguilar is out there. He is the best quarterback on the market as I sift through them in my head. So he will have opportunity. And the Sharks have been circling since like basically that Friday afternoon when Nico didn't go to practice. Like there's, that people have been looking for these ripples and watching these ripples.
The draft, the future, still a ways off for Nico Iamaleava, and we'll see how that unfolds in the upcoming season. But in the upcoming days, the NFL draft will get underway Thursday night on ABC or on ESPN. And part of the coverage, part of the extraordinary coverage of day 3, the real ones stay for day 3. Is our friend ESPN draft analyst Matt Miller.
I'll be
Matt,
at M Street Park in South Boston if you need me on day 3. I'll have you guys in my left ear. I'll be monitoring the slide. Like, let me know. All right.
Matt, I promise I'm going to start at the top of the draft. But I want to give people some sense of this. I mean, you guys spend 365 days a year on draft prep. You, Field Yates, Mel Kiper, all do tremendous jobs. I remember last year, we were on our way to the set on Saturday before that, that marathon of a day, which is really fun, working our way toward the start of day 3, toward Mr. Irrelevant, the final pick in the draft. And I'm pretty sure it was Field that said it to me, although if you said it, please claim it. You said, this is my Super Bowl. This is Super Bowl day for me. And I thought, man, that's a fascinating thing because you're looking at all of these guys. You want to find out how your evaluations fare against where these guys are going to be drafted. How do you view day 3 of the draft? Do you view it that way as your time as a draft analyst to shine?
I do, absolutely. And my role is different because Mel will be on everywhere because he's Mel Kiper, right? So as he should be, he will be on all the coverage. Field has been a great addition to the team the last 2 years. My role is unique in that I joke I'm the closer. They bring me out of the bullpen for day 3 to bring some energy to the group after you guys have all been on television for like 30 hours at that point. So I get to come in. Maybe they'll put a little Enter Sandman for me this year as I walk onto the desk. I think that would be awesome if they could do that.
Is that what you want? Is Enter Sandman your walk-up song? Is that what we need to do?
I mean, I don't want to steal from Mariano because he kind of owns that, but I would take it,
as Yankee propaganda on this podcast.
As a baby of the 80s and 90s.
I'm putting this down in notes right now to remember for Saturday when I introduce you.
Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah. But no, Rece, I do think, and it's so much fun working with you guys, But I do think day 3 is so important. And we can look at the 2 teams in the Super Bowl last year. How many impact players came from day 3, whether it be Isaiah Pacheco or Trey Smith or for the Eagles, the way that they've drafted so well throughout. And, even to find guys like Jordan Mailata and develop them into a premier left tackle as an international pathway player. So yes, round 1 deserves all the attention and, the big event that it is. Rounds 2 and 3 are incredibly important. I think day 3, where rounds 4 through 7, some teams are going to make 4, 5, 6, 7 picks. It's so important in terms of team building, especially in the era of $50 million quarterbacks and $40 million wide receivers. You got to have some inexpensive labor with a salary cap. So finding starters on day 3 is how you win Super Bowls.
When you look at this draft, you always hear where does the draft start? At the top, in your judgment. Because I think we all believe Cam Ward's going 1 overall. And I would assume, I would be surprised if not Travis Hunter right behind. Or does it start 2? Where does it start in your judgment?
For folks who are watching us and not listening, they can see the bags under my eyes because I did not sleep last night because I'm tossing and turning, asking myself that exact question. I think the draft starts at 3. I do think it'll be Cam Ward. It'll be Travis Hunter. And talking to teams this week, I would say it's 90% the Abdul Carter from Penn State, who is my top overall player in this draft. I think he goes 3. But there is at least some push internally with the New York Giants that Shedeur Sanders could still be the pick there. And I think for the folks who are on TV Thursday night, welcome to the Shedeur Watch, because that's what it's going to be. If he doesn't go 3, where does he go? But I think the draft truly starts at 3. It's probably going to be Abdul Carter. But I always remind people, I can remember being in Cleveland, sitting next to Adam Schefter, freezing. And
that was so cold.
Thinking it was going to be Mac Jones at 3. And it was Trey Lance, because owners and general managers and coaches get involved late in the process. Things change. So what we think we know about 3, John Mara could change all that tomorrow. So it's still going to be exciting.
Pete, I'll let you jump in here to say that draft and the selection of Trey Lance when he wasn't ready, and of the passing of Mac Jones and not putting him in a situation that probably would have been more friendly to his skill set, really had an unbelievable impact on the career paths and trajectory of both of those guys. Those 2 careers are way different, in my judgment. If Jones goes to San Francisco 3 and Lance goes someplace, I know he didn't have to play immediately in San Francisco, but where they could really let him marinate a little bit and kind of learn to play quarterback at that level. It's one of the fascinating things about the teams and the GMs making these decisions.
I'm gonna interject here, Matt, because your 2 faithful podcast hosts here, really, we are selfish and we are myopic. The draft really starts at 4 and 5. You have one Boston resident. You have another Jacksonville resident. Rece Davis is adamant that his Jags draft Mason Graham. That's all he wants. I overheard him say it the other day when we were at the Final Four. And Lee Corso was quoted in Adam Schefter's column this morning. He said, "Not so fast, my friend. It may not be Mason Graham." And I live in New England, and if I read one more thing or hear one more thing about short arms on a tackle, I'm going to get longer arms to punch myself in the head, because I think that's one of the dumber things that I've ever heard. So can you please give us some clarity on where the draft starts selfishly at 4 and 5? Will Rece be disappointed by his adopted Duval team? And will I have to hear more about short arms and Will Campbell?
So I just, right before I came on with you guys, finalized my final mock draft. I said final twice.
Congratulations. So that's a big moment.
Which means something will happen that makes me redo it. So here's what I think. Will Campbell at 4. It's not the most exciting pick, Pete, and you're going to have people who say, the arm length.
I'm fine with Will Campbell, by the way. I just don't like the discourse. They need a tackle so bad, it's like mind-bending.
And by the way, I'd be fine with him, too, at 5. I'd be fine with Will? Oh, yeah. At 5, we need somebody to protect Trevor Lawrence for sure. I'm sorry, Matt. Please proceed. Yeah. What do you got?
When you got fan energy in it, this is different.
It's great. we'll get to my Niners. We'll just nerd out today. I do think with this draft, we have to keep things in context. Will Campbell would have been the third tackle drafted last year. I think people get caught up on that. But we're not in last year. We're in this year. And he is SEC battle tested. He is a great human being. And you guys know this even better than I do. He is a safe pick. And I'll never forget when Scott McCloughan got the job back in the day as Washington's general manager, he said, we need to hit a single with our first pick. And they took Brandon Scherf, a guard from Iowa, with the number 5 overall pick. And he was a Pro Bowler for 10 years. Sometimes you just need a good pick. And I think that's what Will Campbell is. Now, as far as Jacksonville goes, and I last night I was talking to someone very high up with the team. Before I haven't talked to Adam in a week, so we were not sharing information. And someone told me last night Jacksonville will be the surprise of this draft. And I'll tip my pick here. I think they go offense at 5. I think if you hire Liam Cohen and you have Trevor Lawrence, it's time to get some production offensively. It's time to put some points on the board. They do need help on defense, but you've got Josh Hines Allen, you have Trevon Walker. Like they've invested in the defense early in the draft. I think they go offensive playmaker at 5. They did. I agree.
They stunk on they couldn't cover.
Who they taking?
Yes.
Who they
I
taking,
do love
Matt?
Josh Hines Allen. Who is it?
I think they take Ashton Genty. Ooh, that's my spicy take that I want to. I have 2 days before the mock comes out, so I might chicken out. And I've got a couple of those picks that you hear them from someone and you're like, God, it makes so much sense, but you feel like you're an outlier if you do that. And that's a scary proposition in this business, is to put something out there. But this is the same source that last year tried to tell me to put Michael Penix at 8 to Atlanta. And I didn't do it, but I hedged in my article and said, I've heard Penix might go here, but that's crazy, right? It will never happen. Same exact source is telling me to put Ashton Genty at 5.
You know, it actually was crazy, by the way, just in defense of what you wrote.
It may work out, but it was crazy.
Oh, yeah. And that's not a knock on Penix financially. And I don't understand the NFL and the cap like the well-paid professionals we have who cover the NFL. But it just didn't make any sense to spend $50 million and then bring in another guy. That just made no sense.
You know, the thing is, and I probably should know this, but Etienne and Bigsby are both still under contract with the Jaguars, right?
They are.
Now I do believe, let the court stipulate, I think Ashton Genty is a significant upgrade over both of them. But here's the other issue. You found it with even as great as Saquon Barkley was with the Giants. If you don't really have the people up front, investing there to running back is, can be problematic. And I don't love, I'm going to be honest about this. I don't love the tackles in this draft. Absent anything else, I would take the tackle, the offensive tackle. That's why I've been adamant about Mason Graham, because I think I would say, you said hit a single. I think he's a surefire double. He's a surefire double, and maybe more, but you at least hit a double there and you help the interior. Maybe that frees up the guys who can rush the passer. But, it's an intriguing thing, because there is a school of thought that if you believe Genty is a transcendent or near transcendent talent, maybe you grab him and maybe you move those other guys that I just mentioned. I don't know what you'd get for them then, but maybe you move them for more picks or something like that to try to rebuild the whole thing. It's an interesting thing. I won't be angry. I'll say that if that comes to fruition, I won't be angry.
Yeah, at least it's so much fun. Like if you're just watching a team, like you're like, okay, 3rd and 3, they run a pitch to him. Like that's, he brings some buzz. What about Jalon Walker? I feel like where the draft starts, if you will, he starts to come into play maybe as early as 4, somewhere maybe. I doubt he'll get to double digits. He's an interesting guy to me because I do all these like not mid-season draft things, but like Georgia's playing Bama. So you talk to 15 scouts. And there was a lot of, and I was actually going to look this up this morning. I will before I go to Green Bay. I remember the knock/book as people were getting to know him was like he was too small and he didn't really have a position and there's no prototype. Like there's no like, oh, he'll be just like this guy who's a dominant all-pro. Why has he had this rise, Matt, and where could he go?
Well, I remember last time I was on with you guys and Rece said that Jalon Walker made Kelvin Banks a guard. And so I think we can point back to those 2 Texas games and say that's where the rise started and was solidified. But I think, and I wrote this in the final mock draft, the more teams I talk to, Jalon Walker is everyone's favorite player in this draft because, high football character, great leadership, great work ethic. He's the kind of player you draft and you're never going to have to worry about.
Dad's a coach, right?
Yeah.
Dad's a coach, yeah.
Yeah. And so in this draft, a player that is going to be really good and you're never going to have to worry about is a pretty dang good pick in this draft. And I think with Walker, you've seen the potential. He only rushed like 185 times last year and had great production. His pass rush win rate was almost 19%. And so I think the idea is, how good could he be if he majored in pass rushing instead of minoring in it, because Georgia moved him around so much. And there was the great sack of Arch Manning where he spined basically, and you just see the closing speed. And so I think if you're an NFL team, you get excited about that. And especially if you run a 3-4 defense like the Carolina Panthers will be doing, the idea of having him on the outside, I think that's really, really enticing. People mention the size. He's not that much smaller than Von Miller, who did just fine, is doing just fine in the NFL, and it has for a long time.
Matt, let's not pass over the guy who might be the best all-around football player, is the best all-around football player, in my judgment, in the draft, and Travis Hunter. He wants to be introduced as both wide receiver and defensive back. What are the, from what you've gleaned, not just where he'll be picked, I think we're all pretty certain of that, but that how he'll be used in terms of where the emphasis lies?
Yeah, that was a big, task for me at the Combine, was talking to teams, where's he going to play? And it was truly split. Now, the Cleveland Browns have come out and said that he would start at wide receiver and they would probably sprinkle him in on defense, which is how, my evaluation of him in season, that was where I landed on it, was that he would be more of a wide receiver first. I think it's more natural for him. He's such a great playmaker. His short area quickness, the way he attacks the ball, his ball skills are incredibly underrated because he's 6 foot, 188 pounds, but it feels like every football is in the air, he somehow finds a way to adjust or fight for it. So I would also tell Travis this: no matter how many snaps you play at corner, play one more at wide receiver, because Jamar Chase is making $40.5 million a year at wide receiver. Top corners are making about $25 million. It's great money either way, but it's a pretty big difference. So I would say the NFLPA and these NFL teams get sticky about what position you play. You want one more snap at wide receiver because that's where the money's at.
Well, let's stick with recently retired Buffalo numbers for 600, Matt, and talk about Shedeur Sanders, who is he is the draft. And really, if we're going to put that, he is the mystery. He is going to be interwoven into everything that this draft is. He is a star. He is also like an indicator that the draft isn't filled with stars, right? So I just think he is the single most compelling person in this draft. It's not even close. Matt Miller, where will he be picked in the National Football League draft?
I wish I knew. Anywhere from 3 to 40 is, and it's
okay.
wild.
That's it, not 56.
Yeah,
only 3 to 40.
Yeah. Is that it? I think 3 to 40. We talked about earlier. He could go 3 to the Giants, and I think a peek behind the curtain for your listeners is this week. Front office people, general managers, head coaches, they're going to present their draft plan to their owners. Those owners are going to say yes or no. And there have been times in the past decade where owners have said, no, we're going this way. And they say, okay, guess what? That's where you're going. So I do think there's still an opportunity for things to change surrounding Shedeur Sanders. I'll say this: I don't get the sense that the New Orleans Saints would draft him at 9. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers at 21 are pretty split right now on if they would take him at that spot. I think Pittsburgh, we talked about Mac Jones falling to 15 and how that changed things. Kenny Pickett falling to the Pittsburgh Steelers and them drafting him set them back several years. And so I think if you're Pittsburgh, you have to worry that you're doing the same thing, that you're drafting a player because he fell to you, not because you wanted him. And so that is an interesting side note. And I'll throw one more thing out there, something I heard this morning. The idea that the Cleveland Browns can walk out of this draft with Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders is possible. I've been told that will not happen because they do not want kind of the overhang of Coach Prime if things don't start to work for Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry of, well, you got his guys, you brought his luggage in, you might as well just bring Dion, even though he signed that new deal in Colorado. So I don't anticipate we would see those two reunited in the NFL just because of some of the optics and some of the pressure that would come with that.
So if Shedeur was in last year's draft with this year's production, the current player he is now, not after his junior season, but after his senior season, Where would you have had him in last year's draft, Matt?
He would have been my number 7 quarterback. And I say that like with no hesitation. He would have been behind the 6 that went in the top 12 last year. And I was a little bit low on Michael Penix. I truly was, especially relative to where he was drafted. I was a little bit worried about the 4 season-ending injuries and being a little bit of an older prospect. But obviously the Falcons were good with it. So I would say like comfortably he would be QB7.
What about Cam Ward?
I think so I did this exercise and I put him at 5, Rece, right behind. I was a JJ McCarthy guy. So I would have said, obviously, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, JJ McCarthy. Then I would have put Cam Ward. And I liked Bo Nix, but again, a guy who was older. I think with these older quarterbacks, you have to have that conversation of, did you finally figure it out in this last year because you just had experience, you had reps, or are you figuring it out because you're 24 and you're playing against 18-year-olds? Because there's a world of difference in physical maturity, mental maturity, processing speed. It's just a world of difference. You're an adult at that point. So that was my hang up with Nix and Penix last year. And we're seeing it again this year, with Tyler Shuck and some of the other quarterbacks who had that late development. And you have to ask yourself, why did they take that jump this year? And even with Cam Ward, I think that's something that is a relevant conversation of, did he take that step at Miami because of, just getting more reps, or did he take it because he had, Elijah Arroyo, Xavier Restrepo, Damian Martinez helping him out?
When you look at this and the foregone conclusion that the Titans are going to take Cam Ward, is this a mistake?
I don't think it
number
is.
One overall. I mean, number one overall. Maybe if you're drafting 9th, maybe not, but number 1 overall.
I don't think it is in the context of the entire offseason, because I think you do have to ask, okay, if not him, then who? What was the plan at quarterback? It can't be Will Levis again. I mean, they're on the 3rd general manager since they drafted him. This is an organization that they need someone to be the focal point and to be their foundation. I think more importantly than anything, someone that can be that building block. So I look at it that way. I like Cam Ward, and everyone I've talked to, raves about the person that you're getting and how dialed in he is, and he's such a great leader. He's obviously, very athletic. He has a big arm, and I do think like his best football is ahead of him. And one big selling point should be he's elevated every program he's been at. From being a wing T 0-star quarterback to Incarnate Ward to Washington State to Miami, everywhere he went, they got better, and he's the common denominator. So I think if you're Tennessee, you feel great about that, and I've heard our colleagues compare him to Patrick Mahomes in some ways. I'm afraid to do that, but that you do see some of the escapability, the arm angles, the arm talent. He's a fascinating player.
Wouldn't that be like me comparing my hair to Rece Davis's if we're going to compare a quarterback to Patrick Mahomes? Sorry, Rece.
Right. Yeah. No, I was going to say that he's super calm. And I think that'll serve him well in the NFL. But I wanted to ask the question because of, you make the comparisons year to year. And when you're number 1 overall, you're being viewed as a potential generational quarterback. I agree with your assessment of where he would have been, but I also think it's the wise move for the Titans. It's what I would do. I would take him. Pete, your thoughts on Cam Ward? Would you take him 1 overall in this draft? Not all time, but this draft. I should rephrase this draft with this team.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. I think there is a risk of letting him go. I think there's some intuitive things that he does that are pretty special and can't be taught. And if you don't have a quarterback, again, this is $1 billion business, right? If you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance, right? You don't have hope. It's a really big drain on a franchise in a city. So I like Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward will be a good NFL starter, but I also sort of can see the limitations a little bit too. Like I can see where a ceiling could emerge at some point for him. I certainly wish him the best. He's an unbelievable story. By all accounts, a very good kid. And look, man, he made his own luck. Like he made his own path. And I have a deep-rooted respect for the path he's taken. And I do think he's definitely the best quarterback in this draft, but he's probably the 5th best player, right? Like there's other football players that I just think are better, prospects than him. But that position, we see it every year. It gets overvalued. We see it now. All of a sudden, people are like, there could be 3 first-round quarterbacks. There could be 4 in the top 40. And I mean, a year ago, if you told me Tyler Shuck might get drafted, by the way, supremely talented guy, like supremely talented guy. He also played against Brock Purdy in high school. So like it just would be, but like good for him. He, again, made the right transfer. Transfers who go to Jeff Brom tend to throw for a lot of yards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty safe space to go huck it around a little bit and develop. So good for him. It's just that position is wild. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, I mean, 2 broken collarbones, I think broken leg, maybe knee injury too. He's had all types of misfortune. Wish him well. Matt, let's do a few semi-rapid fire here. How many quarterbacks go on night 1, first round of the NFL draft?
I think 2. And I feel I would say 1 before I would say 3. Cam Ward goes first. And like I said, I think with Shedeur Sanders, it is that range of 3 to 40. Where is he going to go? I think a lot of times we try to make an extra quarterback happen, whether it be Malik Willis or Desmond Ridder or whatever the case might be. Last year was the exception when 6 went in the top 15. I can't find a team that likes Jackson Dart enough to give up a 3rd round pick to come back into round 1 and get him. So I think we could see quarterbacks fly off the board to start the 2nd round. You know, the Browns are at 33, the Giants are at 34, the Saints are at 40. We could see quarterbacks fly off there. I think 2 on Thursday night feels close to right.
Quickly, don't bet on NFL teams being patient with quarterbacks. I've just never seen it. Just never seen it. That's all. Yeah. No insight there. Just like years of being like, there's no good quarterback price, and then there's like it's they have no governor. Like they can't control themselves with that position.
Well, and then Jalen Milroe goes in the 1st, and
that would really, I would fall off my chair.
But he's going to be in Green Bay at last check. But maybe he's going to stick around for the whole thing. It's a once in a lifetime deal. Outside of Travis Hunter, what wide receiver will turn out to be the best first round pick if there is indeed another wide receiver taken in the first round?
I think it might be light at wide receiver. The rare wide receiver class that doesn't have a lot of first round talent. I will maintain that Matthew Golden has such great ball skills, great hands. He's a very, very good route runner. And unlike some of the other receivers who are in the first round conversation, he is very much scheme fluid. You can play him inside, you can play him outside. We saw that last year at Texas. He can be a downfield threat. He can be an underneath threat. And he also is going to help you in the return game. So he's the player I feel most comfortable. I'm still a Luther Burden fan, and I will continue to jump on that table. I'm not convicted that he'll be a first round pick, which I think will be a mistake if NFL teams on him. But of the guys that are locked in round 1, I'll take Matthew Golden.
Since this is a college football podcast, Matt Miller, we will conclude with one college football centric question. The first pick in the 2026 NFL draft is
not Arch Manning. I don't, and you guys know better than me. I keep telling people he's a 2027 guy. So let's cool our jets a little bit on the Arch talk. That also, the Texas.
That will get aggregated, what you just said, by the way. So,
you know what? I think it will. I think we could see it swing back to the defensive side of the ball. I could see Peter Woods from Clemson being up there. I could see TJ Parker from Clemson, Ruben Bain from Miami. I think next year there will be a lot of quarterbacks to talk about. Obviously, Drew Aller, Carson Beck, Garrett Nussmeier. The list goes on.
Which one goes first?
I'll take Drew Aller. I expect a nice jump from him, but Nussmeier's fun. And you got the Saints connection with Doug in New Orleans. We might see the Saints, punt on their quarterback this year to get one next year. So I'm sure I'll have a mock draft coming out very soon for 2026. I haven't looked that far ahead of my schedule, but it's usually pretty soon after is when they want to see one.
I know that this is insane and unlikely positionally, but I'm going to say it anyway. With the first pick of the 2026 NFL draft, the insert very bad team here selects from Ohio State safety Caleb Downs.
Oh, I would be on board. Best football player in the country next year. The 2 best football players in the country next year are both in Columbus, Ohio. So you guys will get your frequent flyer miles there, I'm sure. Yeah.
Some of your scout buddies last year at the Penn State game, we were talking about various guys on Penn State's defense where they might be drafted, standing on the sideline of the Penn State-Ohio State game. And Jeremiah Smith makes a catch, and he goes, okay, he's 1 overall right now. If I could draft him now, he's the one. And so
I'm with you. If I could take 1-1 in 2025, and even knowing he's not going to play for me for 2 years, I would give up that pick this year to just
Wow.
make sure that he's my guy when he's eligible. I would absolutely buy that lottery ticket.
How about the draft fund you're going to have Arch Manning or Jeremiah Smith in 2027?
It's going to be great. And Colin Simmons, Dylan Stewart. 2027 will be the greatest draft I've ever covered. And I know it's 2 years away.
Wow.
I'm comfortable saying that. It will be.
Wow, that's a good one. That's you know who else will like that, Pete? The aggregators.
The aggregators will like that.
The aggregators will love that.
You saved yourself from Arch not ready for draft to Arch part of greatest draft ever.
There we go.
Don't worry, they'll probably make the headline that. And then they'll quote you accurately, but they'll make the headline that so the people will click on it. Matt, great job. I look forward to seeing you in Green Bay. We'll have fun for round 3 where only the strong survive, only the real ones stay through the end of Saturday.
Send me any tips to stay warm for 9 hours outside in Green Bay. I'm excited to see how that's going to work
underwear.
out.
Do not forget the long underwear.
And then a lot of layers underneath your suit, like dry fit on top of long john. Yeah, like you got to layer up.
Yeah.
And
Shoes,
don't be afraid to wear a beanie. You'll get made fun of by people who have really good hair that don't want to cover it.
Like Rece, yeah.
Don't be afraid to wear a beanie because you don't want to lose your voice in the middle of Detroit and be standing there in the freezing cold wondering when the little red light goes under the camera if you can talk, because it's not a good feeling.
Earmuffs rather than beanie. Hood of some type while not on camera. That's what I say. Long johns, feet. Don't forget the feet, Matt. But I imagine you know that. Yeah, don't forget that. Really important.
Multiple socks though. That's the key. Not just the wool. Put some just regular old socks on underneath, and then the wool on top of them.
Yeah.
Hopefully it warms up, and we don't have to worry about this.
I think it's not going to be so bad. It's going to be not warm, but it's not going to be terrible.
I'm a wimp.
Matt, look forward to seeing you. Thanks. Great job.
Appreciate you guys.
Certainly looking forward to the draft and also looking forward to celebrating the great Lee Corso. Of course, I'm sure most of you, if you listen to this podcast, are fully aware that Lee has decided that he will do one final show week 1, wherever College GameDay winds up. He's been a staple, the cornerstone of the show, Pete. And you've been with the show a few years now. What have your interactions with LC been like during that time?
Well, it's difficult to sort of quantify his spirit, Rece. I did not know him. I don't think I'd ever met him before I started on the show 3 years ago. And he went way out of his way to make me feel welcomed and warm. And he has a rare 1% of 1% ability. When Lee Corso walks in a room, the energy of that room is raised. He has a smile and just an aura about him that is very rare that I've run across anywhere. Relentlessly kind, unbelievably friendly. We traded voicemails over the weekend. Again, just relentlessly kind and giving, and seeing all the tributes from Kirk, who's known him for 3 decades, to Jess Sims, who's known him for 3 years, like I have, and everybody in between. And it wasn't just the on-air people. It was Marissa Dowling, our intrepid statistician, who spent a lot of time with Coach the last 3 years to make sure he was ready for his spots. She, really had an outpouring that I saw of appreciation. Jimmy Galliero, our producer, Drew Gallagher, our old CP, he really touched the lives deeply of a lot of people on College GameDay, and I'm certainly better for knowing him, having worked with him, and I'm really excited that this is going to be the perfect off ramp for him. He seems really comfortable with it, and wherever we may be week 1, Rece, I do feel like there's going to be an extra juice because it's going to be Coach's farewell.
I think I'll miss a lot of things about LC. I don't even know if I can list everything I'll miss about him. But one thing that I will miss will be, maybe you're on a Friday and you're talking about what's coming up on the show on Saturday. And he invariably, after you get to the closing point, he goes, we're going to kill him. We're going to kill him. That was always his thing, is that we'll kill him. It's going to be great. I think what you talked about him embracing newness is something that was very meaningful to me when I came in. And I certainly knew him, and I'd worked with him some, and I knew all of the other guys involved in GameDay better than I knew LC. And he welcomed me in with open arms. He immediately said, you're gonna be fantastic. You love this sport. We're gonna kill him. That was always the thing that stuck with me. And I've always appreciated that, never forgotten it. Some pictures have flowed through one of those old electronic picture frames that you have. I've got a bunch of them loaded up, family and stuff with us. One came up the other day of the three of us actually at a game. And it was at Tennessee, I think. And, we had stayed for a game, and LC always stayed. And I shared a little bit of this on social media that I think beyond the 3 hours, which were magical to have him on there, but some of my fondest memories will be of staying for games after the show with LC. And if it were a night game, maybe he goes back to the hotel, watches games, maybe catches a little nap, and then comes in, just fired up and stalking the sideline and going up and down and still seeing the game as clearly as he did when he was a head coach at Louisville and the head coach at Indiana. And, those moments of seeing what college football meant to him, what the show meant to him, was really inspiring, because you always wanted to have a great show and kill him because you didn't want to let him down. His willingness to jump in and do anything, dressing up like John Belushi to my Dan Aykroyd in Chicago and driving the actual Blues Brothers car down a street in Chicago was a ton of fun. Him crowd surfing at Penn State. We did a show in Times Square. He dressed up like the Statue of Liberty. I mean, the quintessential entertainer, because he always said, it's entertainment, sweetheart. Football is our vehicle. And I haven't told the one story. I said something, it's probably my second year on the show, to show that while he was an entertainer and was fun and was relentlessly positive, he also always had the conscience and the soul of the show in mind. I don't remember what the issue was. We were having Jim Delaney join us when he was commissioner of the Big Ten. And I made some offhanded remark because people were talking about, okay, how are we going to phrase this question? How are we going to, do this so that, we get it? No, I don't know if I want to ask it. And I sort of offhandedly, sort of jokingly said, semi-jokingly, it's no problem. I said, I'll ask the question. I don't mind if Jim gets a little uncomfortable or something to that effect, which is kind of what we do. It's okay. But LC pulled me aside afterward. He said, remember, I know you have to ask questions. He goes, he's a guest on our show. Want to make him comfortable. And I thought that really spoke to it. And I tried to explain, look, it was just sort of in the vernacular, I was just sort of saying I didn't mind asking the question. And he kind of said, no. He's a guest on our show. We want him to be comfortable. And I always try to remember that. Now, I mean, that doesn't mean you won't ask tough questions. He did not imply that or mean that at all. But I think just his feeling of wanting to make sure that people felt the way they should feel, whether they were on College GameDay or a guest of College GameDay, just typified the type of man he is. Can't wait to celebrate him. We're going to laugh. We're going to cry. We're going to go, why in the world did you say that? All of those things that we're going to say during that last show that we do on the first week of the season. And like I said, in some of the things on social media, people say that the show's not going to be the same without him. And there is some truth to that. Not so fast, my friend. I think the impact and the lessons that he taught us will be there from now on. He is the cornerstone, the foundation of College GameDay, and we're gonna send him out on a high note. And we're looking forward to celebrating LC from now and until the time when he does his final show. We appreciate you listening to the College GameDay podcast. Jump in your Pete.
So, Rece, I just want to put a bow on Coach with an article you sent me in October when we were celebrating him in Bloomington. If anyone is interested, now my generation, I didn't know Lee Corso as a coach. I only knew him as College GameDay host. And I'm going to tweet this out this week to make sure people can find it because it is hard to find. There's a Sports Illustrated article. It's about a 5,000-word article from 1977. And the lead of it basically is him taking a picture of the scoreboard when Indiana led Ohio State 7-6 in a game they lost 47-7. The coach stopped the game, called the timeout, and they took a picture of the scoreboard. And it goes into just who Lee Corso was as a coach, how he coached. There are some like PJ Fleck elements to it in terms of positivity, in terms of relentlessly supporting players. But anyway, if you didn't know Lee Corso as a coach, as I didn't, I found this article relentlessly fascinating. It's well done. It's like old school bonus piece Sports Illustrated journalism, and it's worth your time if you are curious about coach as a coach.
It's great storytelling, yes. And I challenge anybody to show up minutes before kickoff to a game, rolling their team down a hill in a double-decker bus, as Halsey did before his first game at Indiana. One of one, man, an absolute gem and a genius in entertainment, tremendous coach. That's the thing I think, Pete, to amplify what you said. People will realize, yes, he's a showman. Yes, he was an entertainer. Yes, he had a fantastic personality. But within that piece, you find out that he was a really impressive football coach too. And I think there's plenty of evidence for that. So we'll look forward to that for sure. We'll see you at the draft in Green Bay coming up, coverage on ABC and also on ESPN. Thanks for listening to the College GameDay Podcast. Download wherever you prefer to get your podcast, or better yet, subscribe and never miss a single episode.